Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Post same sign, passed. So under old business, the first thing we'll talk about is the minutes. I just want to, I saw that at one point Con was here but not here, and then Craig was here and wasn't here.
Yeah.
So who was here and who wasn't here?
Wasn't.
I was not.
Okay, but you were,
I was here. I
Okay.
made a motion,
right?
and then the next sentence says, all from absent.
I know, that's why it's kind of like, where were we at here?
That happened. Okay.
So, Craig was here, so we need to correct the minutes to reflect that Craig was here and that Con was absent. Is that accurate?
In item number 1 and 4. And 4.1 and 4.2. I was here. All right.
All right.
It probably was, we just at the top accidentally pulled and put Craig as absent rather than, okay.
So with those corrections, any other comments or suggestion or corrections with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, a motion to approve.
Second.
First and a second. All in favor? Post same sign. Kathy, should I announce who made the first and the second for you? Okay,
For the people online, that's
All right.
really who it's for.
very good. I'll do that. All right, so let's move to old business. Old business, and we have the emergency loan program update. That is Tyler's big adventure.
Yeah, I can go in a monthly update, show you guys where we are on emergency loan payment.
So my spreadsheet on that is blank.
Oh, let me go to it and see.
You mean it's like this?
Packet.
So that just shows if the red says no means no payments and green means payments, and they've paid through whatever month they end or start on. Yeah.
So, just a quick update on our payments.
So it's color coded,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you have the Christmas color. Very good.
Very seasonal stuff.
So on the, it is up there too.
Okay.
Very good.
Also, just a quick update on the November payments we did yesterday, Monday the 15th. Whole is paid, all the way up through November front quarter. Has paid July through October, has not paid November yet. Remote Range reached out to them, and thanks to Corey, WMD, helped them set up an automatic payment program, so they will automatically deposit into our account every month on 15. They're set up on forward,
So we're kind of back on track.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Well, I know George was here, but I'm wondering, didn't Mary Hill have a loan out? Did they get paid off or what?
I got paid off.
Yeah. All cleaned up. Need a motion to approve or accept
This is gonna be
so we're okay. Moving on. New business. Revolving loan fund. And we have George Hill here. Kathy, do you want to talk about that a little bit, or do you want to, where do you want to go with that?
just the background of the Facebook posts and the information going out for the revolving loan fund at 0% interest. Right now I've met with or emailed 13 different people with possible business expansions or startups. And I would say we're at a point where there's probably 6 different folks. Two of the things that you should remember about the guidelines, you've changed it to 0% interest. Generally loans up to 25,000, and your loans are based on USDA rules, and that's $10,000 per per job that's either retained or started. And so just keep that in mind as you look over this application or other applications. And when George and I met, pretty much the summary in the application that he's provided, and the application is either in front of you or it's up on the screen. The application is for $75,000 for the reason that he is taking sole ownership of the hardware store. Many of you know he's been here for almost 23 years. And so this is the retention of an existing business as a buyout. He's setting himself up for the future succession, and he's already obtained a loan at the bank for $100,000 of the $175,000 that's used for the buyout. And George, I asked him if he would talk to each one of the board members individually, so you probably got had a chance to visit with him. He'd like to continue operating this as a sole owner. He's going to retain 5 jobs full-time, 3 are part-time. And so in your calculations, that is for every part-time job, 3 would be like 1.5 full-time. So he's at what would total $65,000 for the USDA. And I thought maybe George could talk a little bit, and then I could just provide somewhat of some thoughts for recommendations. We just received the application this week, so I don't expect you to vote on it. It hasn't gone to a loan committee yet. And George has until March for you to fully appreciate what his needs are, and for him to fully appreciate what his needs are, providing some of the recommendations. But most importantly, he's provided the name of his banker, and we would go ahead and get an assessment of debt service ratio, credit reports, and collateral that he could use for the EDA funds. And then you would have to decide if 25,000 up to potentially 65 or 75,000 would apply for his loan. But today is informational. You're not expected to vote today because this is pretty soon and it hasn't gone to a loan committee. George, go ahead.
Hi. I think I reached out to everybody in the room, basically, not Emily, sorry about that.
That's all right, I'm a corner.
But in my effort to buy out the business partner, I was able to obtain the first portion of a loan to the Winona Bank, or the Waukesha Bank here, WND. And so that left an additional 75,000 to as a promissory note in March that's due. And looking at that, I did talk to the bank, and I mentioned that I would try to go through the Port Authority, and I had seen that ad in the paper. I might as well try it. So then I connected, and then we shall tell you guys. With that said, I have till March. I would like to get things lined up, of course, before that, but the bank is basically in my corner. I think that, I have the building as well. There's some equity there for things. So I guess I thought I would just reach out and try to cure that, or get that amount to start with, or whatever portion of that would help. And at 0% interest, that's better than the bank's doing right now. The bank rates are pretty reasonable. That's kind of just my jump off starting point with all this, and go in that direction. I know everybody's like, well, you've been there a long time and you're not getting any younger, but
We didn't say that.
That's your inside voice.
I plan on being there a while. Anyway, I don't know what else I would do at this point. I think I made the comment I'm not going to retire and then go buy groceries at the supermarket, because I might as well stay where I'm at for some something to do. So yeah, I've got a good crew. We're gonna try and retain the crew we have. I've got guys that have been there with me for years. Part-time kind of fluctuates as needed. We have been strong through, of course, through COVID. And I thought, well, you know, that's, who knows what's gonna happen after that. We've remained pretty decent after that. So even with all the obstacles that are kind of thrown at us with the retail situation and product and, you know, trying to get product and keep the shelves full and whatnot. So far so good. You know,
Has
who knows?
the employee retention been good too?
Yeah, yes, we have been. I did, earlier last year, I reached out and brought up wages a little bit of what I could do, and that's the other part of things, is just trying to keep everything on a level that works. So, you know, I hear a lot of cries out there of being able to retain employees and find employees. And I've just been pretty fortunate, so.
For the board, actually 3 phases here. The first phase was George reached out to Sempra. Sempra had forgivable loan terms and loan terms for the roof.
Mhm.
So he's improved the building. And so Sempra has, through the county, has commercial loan funds. And so the roof is being cared for. That was a 10-year loan. So if you're in business for 10 years, 50% of it is forgiven.
Mhm.
The second phase is the buyout. And then the third phase would be the back end and the side alley improvements when you're able to do those.
Always looking at, it's an old building, it's always in need of things. Always looking at trying to do what we can. You know, the biggest thing is financial. How do you afford to do some of these things that are, you know, expensive? So we're always looking at ideas to try to keep that going. There, you know, you remember the old back room that was back there. I tell the story about that all the time. We were tearing that off. But yeah, so constantly striving to keep that corner, you know, as good as we can do financially with it. So, and it seems to bounce around, and about the time I get caught up with that section of things or that payment of things, and it's another big chunk of it.
Right.
So it's just the nature, I guess it's been that way since day one. But, you know, I think it's in a lot better shape than it was years ago. So we try to keep that momentum going.
And in the long term, that'll be great for the city because you're having Joe Alley being approved for the National Eagle Center. We have a blank canvas back there that the amphitheater will look on, and then it's really awesome that your deliveries are taken on the side street.
Yeah,
instead
we
of the
don't use
back
the
alley.
back for deliveries, the Joe Alley section, deliveries there. It's pretty tight for trucks to get around in there anyway, but so far using the side has always worked well for us. That's how we built we added that addition on the back, we built it, so that's how it would happen. So, and that's been working fine. We bought a new forklift this year. That was this year, we bought a new forklift that, we had an old forklift that was, man, I think it was a 1957 Caterpillar forklift.
Nice.
But, so I think we've upgraded that and making deliveries a little easier for us and whatnot, so that all helps. Yeah, we've got ideas of, you know, you always have these big ideas of what would be really cool if you do this or this or this, but then reality hits. So basically just keeping things, you know, tight, waterproofed, and looking decent as best we can. And I know it right now it's not, but it's on the agenda for me. So
I don't have a map up, but if you're not familiar, the hardware store is one building, and then Grandpads, Barry's building is Grandpads and part of the hardware store.
Will that go with it, the grant pad, or is that separate? Is that
So the new expansion is not part of this, right?
There's,
the grant pad? Is that
No,
owned by you,
No.
Hill,
no,
or is
okay.
that separate?
My building, I guess everybody's been basically
Yeah.
been in the building. My building, 180 Main Street, is the old hardware store Tyson's were in. We put a hole in the wall going into what used to be the old Coast to Coast,
Yeah.
but and then the realty office. So that is 162.
Hmm.
And I think Grand Path is 160, I believe.
It is one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm talking basically just, right now, what I own is my building. And that's owned under LLC, under just me. And that is 180. And I lease the building, which Barry owns, the 162 building. Barry owns that, and I lease that portion from him.
Okay.
so
So, yeah.
Barry has a building that's leased by both the hardware store and Grand
And
Paths.
grant pad.
Mhm.
Yeah, Grand
Yeah, he's
Path.
got two
I was
spaces.
confused, and I knew that you had something there.
Well, it's been,
Yeah,
it has been and has been.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's been back and forth, so.
So in the end, you will be sole proprietor and you'll own the real estate.
No,
no,
no.
you're still
That's-
gonna lease,
Well, that piece you're not gonna own.
no,
I
That's the
continue, I
question
will
I-
continue to lease that as
Right.
long as I'm able to
Right.
lease it.
yeah,
But you own 180
I
and the
own
business,
180
and you own the business. So, right, all
in the
right.
business, yeah.
Okay.
The building and the business.
So I have still a need to identify information for the board and to bring it to the loan committee. And then we could examine 25,000, 65,000, 75,000, and bring it back to the board next month. If that would be suitable to the board, or if you have other instructions for staff or questions for George.
Yeah, I'm available for any questions right at the store.
well, the loan committee will explore however much debt George has, and how much collateral George has versus against the loan and stuff. Yeah, where's the loan coming from? Is this the USDA one or us?
So-
I don't understand, I mean.
This is the Rural Development Fund.
Right.
It's his application, so that money is, it's not out of our bank account.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Investigate, they do this.
No, we're the judiciary.
Oh, so, okay. That's
Yeah,
my question.
we control it. We have that program.
So this is not coming out of the revolving loan? No, that's.
This is rural development funds.
This would be coming out of the revolving loan funds that is at 146, right about 146.
Yeah.
that
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
voted
Yeah,
To be at
146.
0% until March.
That's what we're offering, is for 0% revolving loan.
Yeah,
But money gets added to that every year, USDA or?
no,
No, we only got 146 available.
you
The
have,
other clarification point is I am saying that we had what the eligible costs that I can see are acquisition and development of land. And so we will need to just clarify, because I had honestly, I was thinking it was acquisition of land from what I'm seeing. So we'll just want to clarify that that is under our eligible costs, but it says, yeah, it does say just acquisition there, but in the revolving loan guidelines, it says acquisition and development of land is an eligible cost. So,
I'm trying to just get my head around what costs comes out.
Mhm.
Is that the USDA? guideline or is that our-
USDA. Yeah,
and so,
Okay. So look on your, on this sheet.
on
Up front.
finances,
Up front.
Okay, right there. Yep. So the bottom part,
You go to
The
next
the
page,
restricted funds?
it'll have fund balance.
what now?
You go to the next page, it's got the balance of each of the four funds.
did you want me to go to finances, Tyler, for October?
Sure.
So under October 21st financials. you
this
have
is-
listed these
Yeah,
items.
This is that bottom chunk of money that's restricted that we can only use for things like this.
Yeah.
It's not our big chunk up top.
No.
Okay. And this money we got because of the,
The 247,
this sometime back, this is the money we got from fish factory.
Oh, okay.
So when we did that FDA,
Okay,
so
all
that's
right.
became,
Now I
so that was a grant, but then it became
Came back,
revolving
okay.
loan fund, so that's where that money is from originally.
We have 142,800 now.
Yep,
And we're gonna, Barge is asking for a loan of up to 75,000 of that.
yes. Up to 75, and it's driven on the number of retained or additional employees, right?
correct.
Right.
Correct. Some people are startups, so they're adding employees to your community, and some people are retaining. And in George's case, when there's an acquisition like what he's doing, a buyout, he's accomplishing a few things, you know, as far as retaining a business in the community. You could look at it as working capital just as much as you could look at it as acquisition. So, but I think we'll look at that at the loan committee, if that's all right. And just kind of determine where does this fall? Does it fall in the right categories, and what is the appropriate amount? And some of that is driven just by debt service ratio and collateral, and also what the guidelines are. So there's a combination of things to look at. And since we just got the application today, right, or yesterday, I guess, Tyler, yesterday, it's just too soon to really dive too deep into it.
So loan committee is Concord and Robin. Are we good with that on this one?
I think, I think one direction I guess I'm looking for is, one of the guidelines it said was, determining based on the potential for economic impact in Wabasha, and we don't have any competing applications at this time. But Kathy, as she mentioned at the start of her conversation, has several. So I don't know, given George's timeline, if we want to wait until we know the scope of all the applications that are coming in, or just look at this one alone without knowing the potential other requests. On the other hand, he's the first one in. I think a lot of people are talking about it, but they haven't yet put in the work to apply. So that I think is a bit challenging because we don't know who else is going to submit, but I do know she has a lot of people interested in the funds.
Inquire upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, there's probably 6 that are looking at it. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best economic impact, but at the same time, our existing businesses are super important to retain. So,
He's a critical anchor in town. So.
yep, yep.
So if we needed more money or if we got 6 other people, can we move money from the money market fund into the revolving loan?
So a lot of times cities either seed it with the USDA or they seed it with tax levy money. I don't know if you have other money within your accounts that you would seed it with, but that's
What happens when you see it?
the first
Well,
time. Yeah, the seeding is the first initial input, and then the revolving is people like George who are making the payments back. So not only does he make it back, and generally there's some interest. In this case, George wanted to put it to use, so you advertise it at 0%.
But just to understand for that, I'm just looking at the.
Oh, sorry, I'll bring it back.
No, that's okay, but just looking at that loan fund, like, I see the 2 deposits from Jesse's Auto and the front porch emergency loan payments. But the withdrawal, the transfer to the checking account, of the emergency loan payments, what is that?
That is that's the emergency loan COVID funds to COVID and for remote items. Twice, so they've been making payments and those were accidentally going into the revolving loans fund. That was incorrect. Those disbursements came out of the checking account. They didn't go back to the checking account, and we were gonna move them or put them in there each month, but I didn't. It's on me. I didn't notice that until last month they were going to
revolving loan fund rather than the checking account. That was a one-time, transfer of funds, from now on, they'll go directly into the checking account, where they came from. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Push this over to loan committee and see what they consider,
We need to do the
do the
groundwork.
due diligence and see where we're at.
And the other thing I wanted guidance on, or I guess the loan committee can decide again, but we had initially sent out a maximum of $25,000, but more on a case-by-case basis. So are we, is the direction to consider more than the established maximum on this? As Kathy pointed out, it's hard to do a lot with 25,000, but I think at the time, we wanted to do as many projects as we could with $140,000.
So how long have we had this kind of marketed?
Started probably October, I think, or the end of September.
In September.
It was kind of, yeah, when we first got going,
So we've had a number of months for people, or a couple, a couple months for people. to
One,
think.
basically.
Oh, is it
Yeah,
really?
one.
September,
Like,
October.
yeah,
it's only
two,
November, sorry.
two, yeah. No, not a lot of
Not
time.
2022 yet.
Yeah.
And it sort of takes a while. I mean, for business startups, like there is one of the, out of the 13, one has just purchased land. So they're getting their design build costs and figuring out what they're going to do. Others are still trying to put their designs together and put costs together with them. And so for some of them, it takes a little longer. You were kind of in the process of what you were doing, so it just matched up perfect with your
Right,
timeline.
Yeah.
And so-
Yeah, this just took place November 1
Yeah.
for me, so.
I'd like to just do our groundwork and then give, George some idea of where we could be by next month. Doesn't mean that you have to make a final decision, but at least we can make some recommendations for you to think about. And again, tying it to jobs, tying it to how many more applications you have in, what kind of economic impact it would have, how it does fit into the loan guidelines, things like that.
Okay. I think a big question too is we need to look at that, the justification of going above that baseline 25,000. So that's a pretty important. Look at that. All right, so it goes to the loan committee. Want to be for the motion on that, or any action on that? Kathy, I think Kathy and Caroline, you're up next. Strategic planning.
So in the,
Well, let me just forgive me. So
Yeah.
George, you kind of figure out what's going on. It kind of goes to the next phase now. We got to get
Right.
more documentation from you. I'm sure Kathy will reach out to you on all that information.
and George, I think the last week when we talked, you were getting everything over to the bank like the next day. So Randy would probably be ready for us to start that work. So
Well, I think the bank has everything.
Yeah, I mean, Con got all that other information for me, so I think so.
So just for the board, application, personal financial credit report, 2 years of financial statements, tax returns. And for loans over 25,000, there's the articles, bylaws, and then there's $100 loan application fee.
And
So
I
there's,
think everything is in that packet except for my articles.
And
because they're-
Jarsted's working on that.
yep,
Yeah,
and
put it in with the-
you can put it out in process with the law firm, given that you've separated out. So we could stay in touch if I need anything more from the bank, and then just continue what staff and loan committee would do.
Okay.
Clear?
Clear. Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate just the opportunity.
So
And
stick
you are
around so you
really
can.
important to us, George.
I appreciate that. And as all of you to us.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda is the strategic planning. And there was a survey that went out that you put together. Thank you. So guys, go for it.
In your packet, you have an overview, and the overview also in the agenda has a link to this document, which has graphics, and it's just identifying where did the top priorities fall for you. And even though there were 12 different priorities with different points value to each one of them, I'll be able to, with the help of the, let's see, it's Mary and one other person.
Me.
Yeah, okay. Once I can send out an overview to them, there'll probably be 4 or 5 different categories that we will move all of the 12 into, and then have different activities within those, who's responsible for them with the timeline. So that'll be the ending document that you receive. Hopefully it'll be next month without any issue. And so right now you can see that the most important thing to you is business support and development, the loans, incubators, TIF, tax abatement grants, small business counseling for your existing businesses and for any new business startups. And then you really felt strongly about historic downtown and ongoing revitalization of the downtown, adding more retail spaces, applying for deed small cities block grants to rehab buildings, support of the Main Street program, selling city-owned land to assist with strategic goals, as well as adding to the tax base. And right even with that was the development of housing. And that, again, was followed very closely by retaining and attracting the residents. And that was tied with developing childcare as infrastructure to support the housing and workforce. You go down a little bit further into your business development, and you felt strongly about tourism-based businesses and tourism asset development, which, as you can tell, the Eagle Center is really important to you downtown, and continuing to work with that and other tourism-based businesses. So when you're doing your priorities of your revolving loans and other tools, whether it's a tax abatement, a TIF recommendation, or a loan, you should be able to use the strategic plan to say, this is really important to us. And so this is reason why we would give these kind of funds out. So this should be a helpful tool for you. A little bit farther behind is the development of agribusiness, whether it's digesters, farmers market, farm to table restaurants, things like that. And then manufacturing and large industry in your industrial areas. And then a little farther down comes events for businesses and community initiatives. So networking and education, and followed by do you need the development of additional healthcare needs? And probably because you're so strong in healthcare businesses, having the hospital, having optometrists, dentists, chiropractors, there's a lot of communities that don't have nearly the amount of services that you have here. So I can see why it would fall into like a category where you could see this graph where it's kind of split. Building upon arts and culture, you know, you have your own unique history. You are sort of becoming a bit of an art and cultural space with your restaurants. You've got the history of the Anderson House. You've got people moving to the community to open up art centers. So you can't really ignore that as a critical piece to your development because it will be unique to you. And then developing business around equity and inclusion. And that's not unusual that sort of falls towards the bottom of the 12. And that's just because I think, you know, every document that you have and every loan document that you have, you're already trying to follow equity and inclusion and your business development. The more you put out there on the website, the more people that you're going to connect to, because that's the first place they're going to go usually is either talking to someone locally or maybe even first from being far away, like Florida, to buy a brewery, you might be going online to look for information. And you were interested in having education, but it looks like it should be delivered carefully. It looks like people only have limited time for it. And so you want to make sure that it's in short segments or delivered so people can learn about it on their own. And I think the director's report or small tidbits of information during meetings is probably the best route, but I'll also need to put things on the website. So that's where we're at, and you'll have a chart that shows the different activities, and then you'll have a guideline of the activities with, like I mentioned, dates to complete. And they should probably be fairly well underway and ongoing by 2024 for all of the projects. For instance, if you start a local housing committee, you may not apply for workforce housing grants until the very end. Things like that would be a good example. So, and things are already underway. The Minnesota Housing Partnership Institute application, as soon as we have letters of support, that can be sent in. Starting up a local committee for childcare can start up. You've started your loan committee. So you're doing a great job of getting things, your groundwork and your base to accomplish a lot. So, do you have any direction for me or questions for me? Any surprises?
What's the next step?
The next step would be for me to work with, to take the documentation I have and put it into something that would be presented, but only presented after it's been reviewed and edited and worked on with both you and Mary. Mary said she had some experience in strategic planning, so I think she can also take a look at that and see if it feels right to her as well. And that would be my thought is what the next step is.
Sounds good. Any questions or anything with respect to this? Let's continue.
Have you done it before?
No, this is all brand new to us.
Okay.
This has been a big goal of our, some of us for some time now. To actually have some kind of a document that could begin to guide us.
Yeah, I think it helps you focus on the areas that you want to develop the most.
Mhm.
And I think just like when you start a housing committee, it really gets you focused on developing housing. Same thing with childcare. Like, it's not that you didn't start. I think you even started these things, but then COVID hit and you didn't really have staff. So I think the combination of getting back on track and having staff will help you a lot.
Agreed. So there's no further comment or anything on that. Let's move on. And Kathy, you're up next with this city land, the future letters of interest. I'm interested to hear what your thinking is with this.
When I started, I was given a tour of different properties. And some of the property that was first and foremost, not to exclude the existing land that's owned by privates, but you have city land that's owned by the city, but maybe isn't bringing any tax base or any jobs or any economic opportunities to the community. So one of the areas specifically that is part of a bigger plan, it's part of the Highway 60 realignment, but is on the other side of the road, is next to, which would be the west side of Dick's Market. And the city of Wabasha owns that land. It is a parcel that could be put to its highest and best use. It doesn't mean it doesn't have challenges. First of all, it's zoned for non-homestead municipal. So it would need its own zoning, likely to be commercial, I would think. And it would need to be created into two parcels. So when you look at the map up there, you can see that not only is it at Dick's Market right there, but it's also across the street. So that other piece right there, that's actually the same parcel. So you'll want to separate those out.
Which part, which two parts?
Mosquito field is what she's talking about.
Mosquito field, yeah, that part.
And when
So right across the road.
The tennis court, like the new road?
Well, it's actually where the old dump was, isn't it? That
It's
corner.
the existing
That's further
road
over.
that splits it.
Oh, yeah, Hiawatha, but are we talking about whatever's on the, we'll call it the north end? Yeah. No, I'm talking about the south end. Well, that's Mosquito Field. Mosquito Field. I thought, are we just talking about Mosquito Field, or what's the second parcel?
Well, that parcel is actually.
It goes across the street.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what he's getting at. Okay. Because it goes over up to the tennis courts, and I don't know if it goes over all the way to Oh, really?
The bridge or not, yeah.
I think it goes all the way to Bridge.
That's,
And it just touches on the volleyball courts. So it's that first patch of gravel. You know, kind of just right across the street.
so it is the frontage.
Yeah.
It's about
just the
three
front.
hundred and twenty feet.
I didn't realize that. I couldn't figure it out either when I was looking at
Yeah.
it.
So it has a market valuation of 130 with both sides of the road. It's about 2.4 acres, just the piece that's on what I would say is the southwest mosquito field. It has 320 feet of road frontage there. So those are some of the, we'd also, I've ordered our CETA specific data for your community so I can know a little bit more about how else we could do like a marketing piece on this. And then we can also look at if we can get any data on car count as well. And the challenge is that was brought to me was that it has fill that's needed. And then for you all to determine its highest and best use. And one of the things that I would say about determining its highest and best use, I'm just putting 3 other parcels up here that you own, just so you can see right next to it on the north side, there's a parcel. And then to the north of both of those, there's a larger parcel. But if I were to go to the concept design, which was just displayed to the legislators, the whole north, not the mosquito field section, but the whole north section is really nicely designed for some multi-family, for some commercial, and it has the highway realignment. And then you can see when you go right here where the cursor is, you can see that next to Dick's Market, you've got a mixed use design there. And you don't have to follow that exactly, but what they're saying is, hey, you've got a real opportunity to put some commercial in there.
Just want to frame this a little bit. So they had an architect come down, the university had an architect come down. The architect was one of the guys that worked on the Eagle Center when he first set that up. So these are just some blue sky ideas. He just threw some out, and there's actually a number of different versions of this. So you're not married to this in any way is what I'm saying. So you can move this stuff around. When there was a lot of debate on how we should intersect Hiawatha Avenue into the new Highway 60, should Highway 60 T in the Hiawatha, should Hiawatha T in the 60? That's still up for debate, so you can do all this stuff. So there's a lot of things out there.
Yeah, I would, if the highway does go through there, everything to the west, and it should be commercial. You're gonna have businesses like Subway and that might want to move.
Yeah.
Because, and the gas station
Yeah.
that are gonna be dead in the water.
Yeah.
So everything on that could be a commercial road to get people to stop once they get here or come across the bridge.
Yeah.
So I would leave that open for businesses retention.
Yeah, one of the first ideas was to have a much larger commercial.
Right, on that strip.
Yeah.
One of the items that Brian mentioned when I was at the National Eagle Center legislative bond tour is that open space right there that I guess I'll put my cursor on if I can. So right here, this spot,
Yeah.
he said that won't be green space. That would have to be like a holding pond. So he will have to have a spot for all of this new
Right.
blacktop to have retention, water retention. And
Well,
so,
the businesses too, that all.
yeah, so when you come to the south, where we're just kind of focusing on mosquito field, or I'm not gonna call it mosquito field because it's so unattractive, but I'm gonna call it the soon to be commercial lot next to Dick's.
Call it soccer field. That's what it used to be. Too.
Soccer
Yeah,
field.
soccer.
So that area right here, you can see someone's probably going to have a lot of blacktop. So where's the water going to go? The water's going to go to this area, which Brian said would have to be generally like a holding pond.
So we got a couple issues here. I think we've focused on this on that parcel that you're pointing out for a number of years. And for a long time, we didn't think it was big enough to build on because of the wetland that it abuts. And so we actually got a wetland delineation study done, and we were able to, actually have that done, so we know where that line is. Now, in this concept, of course, that line isn't considered. So we don't really know, and I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember a little.
You know, but I don't remember.
Building, the mixed-use building and the steel field.
Yeah,
It's between the mixed-use building and the slough. That was where the wetlands were.
right. But I mean, what my point is the total usable land on that parcel. And certainly after
Up
we,
about that tree line.
and certainly once we fill it up, because we've got a slope issue as well, once we fill
You can't fill in the wetland.
it. Right, you can't fill in wetland, so it's got a slope to the wetland.
Yeah.
All that being said, because we're kind of in the middle of this Highway 60 reroute, I'm pressed. I mean, I look at the entrance design in this particular one, right? It shows it, closer to the grocery store. We don't know specifically what or how MnDOT's going to agree or what they're going to agree to for intersecting.
True.
We might come to realize that we need to cut a deal with the grocery store and have some kind of an easement for a common entrance into both parcels because of where 60 is landing on Hiawatha. And we don't have a lot of control of that yet. For me, right now, to try to market this parcel, it doesn't make sense because we couldn't tell them how they can build on it yet. And we are, we're such great fortune to be on the committee's tour. So it's being considered, but we don't know where it's going to end up. And I would argue probably out of the two projects, this is the one that they're more interested in, even though it's bigger dollars.
This is the one that's floating around, but to me, it would be nice to maybe have some additional housing in there. And I'm wondering who's going to want to put their house next to the truck route. Because we've got the problem right now. The houses are next to the truck route, and that's what we're trying to solve. So we want to go back and put houses again next to the new truck route.
Yeah, and that's true, right? So, and the kind of housing that it's going to be, does it matter? Is that housing pushed back farther? It's going to be all phased. What we see here, I mean, this is concept number 1 of 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
This is going to be done after I'm long gone. The total part of it. You know what I mean? Well, you know what I mean. It could be tomorrow. They catch up to me. Anyway, so my point to all this is that I think we need to get that highway mapped, right? And once it's mapped, right, then we have a better idea of what we can market.
Well, isn't the highway mapped already in these concept drawings? I mean,
They're strictly conceptual.
They're conceptual.
They were drawn by a landscape architect.
well, that's what Brian and I have been using for all of our bonding requests.
Yeah.
But they're concepts. So in any design project, you start what's called a schematic design. It's an idea, and that's what these are.
Okay, well,
they're meant to show that.
I guess I incorrectly gave Kathy direction that like, hey, let's start moving on this because I guess if the bonding committee gives us the money next year, we'll probably want to have some developers lined up. And then I guess it doesn't feel like we have a plan. I mean, I know we need the money, so I guess we're waiting for the money, but
It's hard,
yeah.
so to John's comment, it's hard for me to imagine any developer being interested until they have great certainty over the roadway situation.
Sure,
And I don't
yeah,
think we
that
would
makes
be in a
sense.
position to market a parcel without that same certainty.
Okay.
So the first step being the highway reroute is a big one. It's the key. It's the key that unlocks the opportunity, but these are not engineering drawings.
And as a
we
former-
won't be there for quite a while.
As a former MnDOT design engineer, I can tell you, they're going to want to fool with this.
Oh yeah.
So we have to see what they're going to agree to.
And then it quote unquote gets mapped. And when it's mapped, that's what we can bank on, right? That's the phrase they use. So that's when we know where it's going to actually land.
This document was the culmination of, many
We're
months,
learning.
many months of stakeholder involvement and
Yeah.
also the design team really poring over our formal policy documents, including our comprehensive plan and all of our zoning policies. So this is like, hey, we've read and heard what you say you want.
Mhm.
This is a concept that would allow for those, goals, many of those goals to be achieved. But it doesn't mean that it couldn't be one single multifamily building, or it could be, what they were doing with the housing is they were reflecting the style of housing that exists on the opposite side of Allegheny. They were just doing a nod to kind of what our community already does, that they're in no way saying that's the market rate housing you should do, or that's what developers want. It's really just to show, hey, you could do this because you've already done this, and that seems to have been successful. As well, they're showing like all the options as well on this other side of the so you could do a different type of housing. As well, you could have green space. As well, you could still maintain some of your recreation area. As well, you could retain some parking because that person gets used for that. So it's really meant to show, hey, you can do all these things, but it's not meant to say this is where those pieces go. I think intuitively it does that. It's just commercial by commercial, housing by housing, green space along a, an existing waterway. But there could be a case made that the housing flips to the other side and is against the waterway. Or that there could be a case made that you retain some of the recreational space. Because if you don't have developers chomping at your heels, maybe some of that recreational space remains there as an amenity for housing. So it's supposed to show the opposite of what I think we've been inclined to do, which is zero sum thinking. Like, well, if we reroute the road, then you can't have anything in that parcel. It's like, no, you can have all the things that you want in that parcel. And so it's just kind of to demonstrate that.
Yeah, one of the other concepts was more recreation, so.
Yeah.
Take that volleyball courts and move them somewhere else.
So one of the cool things I think about today is that we've flushed out that, there's going to be some steps to MnDOT's highway design. There's going to be reparceling, there's going to be zoning, and there's going to be the need to attract a developer. And I think we also heard that this might be a little bit more housing at the National Eagle Center. I heard that this trail along here was very important to people. So I think that should be conveyed. And then, a developer is probably going to flip this anyways. They're going to put the mixed use closer to the grocery store, farther away from the water, parking lot closer to where there's wetlands. And so, like you said, there'll be lots of changes. But when you're ready, of course, you're going to want to go out to someone like Quick Trip and say, you don't want to be stuck up here where you can't be seen. You want to be down here by the truck route. Which parcel do you want and how much do you want of it? And then you'll also put these letters, request for proposals out to others. But, if you're ready to wait till MnDOT, that's fine, but we can get all the rest of our ducks in a row as if you were going to put the letters out there.
Yeah.
And I could just put one more thing in people's heads, because I thought it was really key. Craig disagreed, we heard it differently, but from a planning perspective, from a city planning, urban planning mindset, one thing that the landscape architect verbalized, which I didn't see until he said it, but I think it's really key, is the attempt here is to connect your commercial corridors, your historic corridor with your kind of contemporary corridor. And so what has worked for communities is what works for communities is what has worked for communities. And that is to not create weird cul-de-sacs and unfortunate kind of parking, like clover leaves that people can't get from one place to the other without sort of leaving town. So I think that grid notion, even though it's a challenge because we're already bisecting it with a truck route, I hope we can keep that in mind so that whatever is ultimately developed there has a connection to the other amenities, to the supermarket, to the downtown, to all the recreation. I didn't see that until Jason pointed it out when he came to talk to the court and council joined him.
Yeah, we one of the problems when they took the traffic, Highway 60 traffic off of Pembroke Avenue, then the complaint was, well, now everybody bypasses the commercial district, the business district. And they do, but that's the nature of things. That's what the commercial people really don't want us to go through town. They'd rather just have the best way, easiest way out. So that is one of the goals, is to try and connect. We have this commercial property down there where the Quick Trip is, that segment. And we also have commercial property downtown. So if we can find a way so people can easily move between one and the other, that would be it.
Both as pedestrians and as vehicles.
Yep.
Okay. So I misunderstood. I thought Mosquito Field was out there to try to get people to develop, and so I'm hearing that you guys want to wait
Pretty
till.
much everything in green needs
Okay.
sand, so there's also
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think that's a barrier we can talk about with developers, like, here's what it's gonna be. So I had always heard that filling it was the barrier, and I think that can be overcome if you demonstrate the value of the parcel or do a write down on the land.
That, again, back to you, there's many steps, that's one of them.
Can I ask you a question? When you have an agreement with your private developers, so you get a tipping fee, you get the sand in, let's say that project goes. Can you take the first amount of sand for yourselves and like find out how much cubic need you have here and assign the first sand that comes off to your own project and then let the developer take from there?
So that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And that question, we don't know if it has to land in the final resting place before we can use it or not. And so I think our attorney that's been working on this is approached the core with respect to those kinds of things. Is it that we own the sand and control the sand at the point of the port or the point of the final resting place? That's our big question. Our goal has always been to take the sand, at least initially or as it goes, and to fill, like Mosquito Field, begin to fill the fairgrounds with this open space. How much money do you think it would cost if we hired, 20 years ago, hired you to fill Mosquito Field?
Well, if you got, where are you gonna get the fill?
Let's just say you got it the sand, so we're just paying,
It would just be astronomical.
it would be right?
I mean, you have to have the core do it, and once it's there, I mean, every other site, every pit in town, once it was there, it would turn over to the plant.
Right, yeah.
It's done once they put it.
Yeah.
So
in this
that question's
instance,
out.
that's the tricky
But
part.
for somebody to do that, I mean, you wanna sell that parcel for $130,000, it cost you $130,000.
I heard some crazy number,
It's
like
crazy,
300 one
yeah.
time, yeah.
130,000 is like should really mean nothing to you because what you want to do is build your tax base. So
Yeah, we don't, the price
No,
of
I
the
mean,
land
it's
isn't
just-
really there.
The advantage we have is the sand. I mean, it'll be done and they're gonna relocate the fields up over here. So that's the way to go.
do you have an analysis on how much sand you need from the
I think
very
we figured that
first?
all out as to
Yeah.
where we can find spots. to throw
Put
the
it,
sand.
yeah, we have it.
We
Yeah.
have 6, 7 spots and that was one along with the mosquito field. So
But I don't even
there is
mean-
numbers on that already, how much fill.
I don't even mean Mosquito Field, but this whole
Yeah,
entire.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Okay,
that was included in, if we could make $1 million over 10 years or 20 years, we had to prove we had that much, and that's part of our plan.
Yep, it's part of the,
okay,
So,
because I know you need the private developer agreement to go with the Army agreement to make it all work, but you also need the sand first before the private developer.
well, I think the sand is coming, I think that.
yeah, so the private developer or our port operator, was that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, he would work, they would work in concert with us to fill these sites.
Okay.
That's part of that whole package.
Okay.
I think we probably, the sand is ours, but we're probably gonna have to pay Coner to haul it.
Haul it.
From wherever.
That's a good question as to, he has a contract to take X number of yards in his pit, but we have all these other places.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, how does he get compensated?
Yeah.
Because he's charging to get it to point A to point B this way.
Yeah.
So that's a good question to ask.
See, so is it a wash, is our tipping fee a wash on this stuff, you know
We'd
what I
have to
mean?
figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure that, I mean, that's,
We'll have to pay.
But once his pit is full, but we don't wanna wait for that, that would be 10,
no, it's
15
too long.
years. We want the sand in it. So
Right.
we'd have to talk to the Conan to see.
Yeah, you want the first sand that comes off to get the economic impact.
That's our
Moving the
goal.
highway.
Yeah,
Right.
yep, that's the
But
goal with
the
this.
plan that we have is just Conan's pit for now.
Yeah, and
It's enough for 10 years to fill his.
the last
so-
call we were on with respect to that was talking about where's our control and where do we start that process?
We have to own it to place it at these sites, the Corps wants to place it at these sites.
And where do they release ownership? At our port or at the final resting place? That's the question.
I think they're gonna wanna release it at the barge terminal or at the log shop gravel pit, the railroad pit.
Right, so hopefully they'll release it at the terminal,
Yeah,
because then we can through Coners,
Yeah,
shift it to wherever we
that's a
want.
good question.
yeah.
You know,
But
because
at least
remember the DMP, the dredge materials master plan, right? The final resting place where all that's gonna go and why we got the cell started because of Fitzgerald and Drysdale and all that kind of stuff, right? So they've identified those final resting places. And through their mandate, they have to show that it's gonna end up there, right? So if we get in the middle of that and move it somewhere else, then that does that negate or does that, affect that final, their plan, their mandate? Does that change the numbers and stuff? And we talked about that. So that's all in the process as well about when is all this going to occur.
Yeah, I guess, like, I came from La Crosse, we didn't have a sand pit in La Crosse, so we just used desirable land and we did write-downs on the land. We're like, we'll give you the land, you cover the cost of fill. So I've also seen other models, which without really knowing numbers, you say to developer A, it's $200,000 of fill, but we'll admit or organize an agreement, but again, it's because it's going to be a business that you really, really want. The other example I saw is a group like yours did do the fill themselves for all the developers. We actually have a lot of land in La Crosse, multiple parcels, all in the floodplain. And then an organization, we're using taxpayer dollars to get it filled up, ready to go, and then bringing in the developers for the future tax base and using all sorts of financing mechanisms. So, I think it wouldn't hurt to get just like a cost, what is 25,000 cubic yards of fill gonna cost, like regardless of where it comes from, and just see how does that compare to the value of the land and the potential tax base.
Yeah, I think we've got a number of them on fill, and you get the fill free, it's the trucking.
Yeah.
Compaction and road bases and
Phil's free.
stormwater and sewer, storm sewer, all that.
Is that something you can estimate, Dave?
I think that Brian has already, I think.
Brian's got those
he
numbers.
did estimates on
I
that.
have that in front of me. I'm looking at it. It doesn't. For it, but
No.
it does say how much.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fill.
Yeah.
Wow. But
Well, it was like 200,000 for cubic yards for mosquito field and about 300,000 or 400,000 for the athletic field. So it's, in the whole scheme of things, that's not a whole lot.
It was kind of a funny thing because it seemed like a lot to try to get it there for beneficial use, but it was nothing, it was a drop in that bucket compared to how much sand needs to be placed in total. So it was kind of.
Yeah. And the idea of incentivizing developers by, providing the land or supplying the land, we've looked at that on multiple occasions. So yeah, that's very much in things that we've considered doing. So yeah.
I think that the question though is knowing, like, is it $1 per cubic square feet to haul it? So the only wild variable right now is you've got the sand, somebody's got to haul it there.
Trucking for 3/10 of a mile.
Well, you can look at the cost to truck it from the weld shop gravel pit across the road to Coners land right there.
What they're getting.
They did that 2 times, 4 years ago.
2 winters, 130,000.
Yeah.
But did that include the cost of the sand or just the truck?
No, the cost of sand is free.
There's no cost to the material. It's just the truck.
But the Corps paid for that.
Yeah.
To make room for dredging of the reeds pit. So, and they're going to
cheaper price,
continue.
and we won't be using federal prices.
So what we want to do is,
When they
what
do
you'd
that,
like to see
you
is
guys
some
take
kind of a
that
dollar
down.
value and get those to shovel
He
ready,
didn't haul it, but he got,
right?
took.
I think we can clarify.
Why he got it. I
Okay.
don't understand.
And then I guess it doesn't sound like you're ready to have a highest and best use conversation, but you know, Kathy's talking to people all the time that are thinking about their maybe project 4 years or 5 years out. So I think we know that we hope that the highway is getting rerouted through there. We know that. So I feel like there's potentially some direction as she's out there having conversations or I'm having conversations. You know, is it kind of what's outlined in here, mixed use or
I think what I could do too is if I do get someone interested, then we get with Minda.
Oh, yeah. It's the fact that we're gonna develop this land with the state of Minnesota. Where are you gonna put the road? Because we're gonna do this. We can't wait 10 years. We need housing now.
Yeah.
Can't we put some pressure on, or are we gonna sell this to some developer and then we'll have to condemn whatever to get your road?
We'll know soon enough. I
We
mean,
should.
soon enough, I mean, what, in 2022,
Yeah.
we'll know soon enough if how close we are with bonding. And we continue to talk to MinDOT about the reroute. So that's on their radar. I assume that within the next 24 months, we'll have a good idea really where that road will end up or where they anticipate.
I
And by
always
that
understood we built the road though. Am I misinterpreting that? I thought we built the road and then at that point, no,
No,
MinDOT built.
We'd
it.
have to do all the
Well,
internet.
it'd be the midnight specs, but I mean, yeah, we'd have to pay for it. They'll pay for part of it.
Mhm.
'Cause-
But we are managing the project, right? Or no?
Well, I mean, that's a good
Okay.
question.
All right, I'll ask Brian that.
The
Yeah.
only other thing I learned, when all this information was presented is I talked to Greg Davids. I said, how much do you have in dollars for bonding projects? And he said, they have requests for $6 billion and he has money for 1 billion. And, that they hoped that the government money that was coming from the federal would help them, do more projects than 1 billion. And they hoped that, and then the gentleman from West St. Paul said that there's special money for port authorities. And so developing your port may have some influence on one of your projects as well. So you may have some. And if I was a betting person, I'd say you got 1 in 6 chance right now, and maybe that'll go up.
It's not bad because there's,
Yep,
yeah.
because you don't know what the other projects are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so some of that federal money that ties up, the federal money is really looking at infrastructure, right? So it's roads, bridges, all that kind of stuff. And both of our requests are very much behind that. And the impetus of these two projects is that basic rural resilience, community resilience and improving our community. So it ticks all kinds of boxes, right and left. So,
Have you ever testified in
yeah,
front of the bonding committee? Okay,
Yeah.
because I would assume you'd have to do that again you'd have to be prepared for that in February.
so I'm wondering Thursday, are you
Not
gonna make it?
happening,
It's not gonna
happening.
happen.
They recommended if it's just gonna be a presentation and not seeing the sites, they just said, why don't you wait till you go in front of the committee? That makes
We
more
tried to do on
sense.
the Senate bonding tour as well.
Yeah.
but They were not responsive until kind of last minute, so we're not gonna be on there, but my impression is the house is more important, starts in the house, and you have a very strong case, so I would anticipate us getting a hearing for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd go speaking before the finance committee for the Senate at this point.
Okay.
I have a question, as far as dredging this loop. Is there any thought of that? I mean,
Yeah, we just gotta figure out where we're gonna get that money from.
well, that's what I mean, is because that's besides the sludge, it's all gravel. I mean, it's perfect fill. So it should be because it's a swamp. I mean,
Yeah,
both those would be nice to fill both sites.
it's an interesting option.
Yeah, I know, and a big thing when they did it when I was a kid, they did up to within 100 feet or 200 feet of where the road passes because it's such a terrible bridge but they'll be replacing that if they're gonna have a highway there. That one over.
Yeah, I would hope that culvert is really old.
I know, and that's why they couldn't dredge up to get so close to it because the footings aren't. I would think they'd be replacing that, so that would be a good time to dredge that whole thing and get the fill in.
We're gonna be busy.
But see, could that be covered under, bonding too? I mean, dredging.
Yeah, I think, like we, in the order of the priority, it is getting the highway in there, and then we'd
Yeah.
like to try to fundraise to get
Yeah.
the dredging done, because we
Because
think
the
that will make it.
slough is only gonna get worse and worse and worse until the water is like
There's
this, and
nothing
the trees, it's 2 feet deep now in most places.
So to answer your question with respect to highest and best use, as we begin to talk more publicly about this whole reroute and everything and the opportunities that, you know, and these are conceptual designs, and also these are the parcels that we'd have available, conceptually at least. We continue to develop that strategic plan, right? That will help us determine those other options. Then what do we identify our needs as? And I've always kind of been market driven. It's like, who's interested in developing, you know, because they see the businesses are seeing expansion possibilities or growth possibilities. They want to move into this area, whatever that might be.
So we have 2 council reps. Is there a planning and zoning rep that's on the same page as this concept design? Is that they're going to be the next people to move it forward?
They've all been involved with
Okay.
with this project. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, where are we at?
Checking it.
Yeah. That's you, Mr. Tyler, checking account.
Yep, so Caroline and I, I'm going through the financials, just noticed there's a, 7430 checking account, that since I've been here, we just had the same $2,500 balance, it's been nothing deposited or withdrawn. So just to simplify things, we're thinking, and I talked to Sandy at the bank too, to see if there was a special reason for this account, and she didn't know of any, so we're thinking if it's okay with everybody, it'll be easier if we can just close that one out, move the 2,500 to another fund and close that one out, since it doesn't appear to have any reason to be open right now.
Sounds good.
You need a motion?
We should probably have one.
Yeah.
Say,
Motion to close that checking account.
I'll move.
Vulcan moves, got a second?
Second.
Con seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. There you go. Kathy, your director's report.
I won't go too deep into things, but just so you know that I did send some CETA documents for the city, light ordinances and reasons behind the action steps that different cities take to create light ordinances. So they create them and then they work on enforcement, and then they actually take property within 3 years if there's not action done. It's created some opportunities for land use and tax base improvements. So I sent that along to Caroline. There was a succession planning document that you have a link to that's now on the city website. And then we added educational events to the city website. And the revolving, and I do have one person that I'm talking with on these 13. I sent, I think 5 of them to attend the cash flow statement class tomorrow, and that's at 9:30. So they were in my email list for that as well. So I directly emailed them. Revolving Loan Fund, I have a checklist created, and we have the local tracking list. These are just some names of people that either are kind of in the progress so that you could follow that a bit closer. You can ask me directly if there's somebody that you want to know more about. I try to keep John and Caroline and Emily informed too. Strategic planning, we've gone through enough about that and the website. We've added some items, childcare. I got the list from Emily and Caroline of who attended in the past in 2019. And I sent out would you be interested in still working on this? And so far it looks like the second Tuesday of each month. And we were looking at 11:30, but it was suggested by the county that if we want to invite some of the local providers, that they could get online at about 1:30 when the children are napping. And so that's probably one of the highest and best times for us to have meetings is 1:30. So and we had one of the people invited say that they would host at St. Felix for the first meeting. So I think we're really coming together on that. There's a link here just to who was invited and all of those sort of things. So you can look at that in your, if you want to look a little deeper into what's being organized. And then, you know about the Minnesota Housing Institute, that we're going to put an application in to have their support to the local housing meetings. Backing up to childcare, Mackey is an aide to Tina Smith, so she's willing to come on the local committee. And we had a meeting on housing with SEMCRA, so your local organization. And we talked about what it could look like to have a small cities block grant. There was some miscommunication on maybe how restrictive the downtown covenants might be for historic. I think that got more ironed out, and there could be more synergy between SEMCRA and the city. And they have a current program, as George has used, and they also have a current housing program right now that has 70 different housing units that need to be targeted. And so the city's willing to do some Facebook posts for them to let them know where those areas are. Interesting, the chamber has a business list, but it's just a list of emails. It's not attached to the name of the businesses. So we have a uphill climb an opportunity to build a business list. That's a really interesting document. It's just a document that Vision and Design has used for the constant contact in the past. So my first initial thing that I'll do is I'll just download all of the emails and say, are you an existing business? Would you like to be on the list? Would you like to be taken off the list, and see, and who are you? So we have to kind of start figuring out the build. One of the things about joining Rochester Area Builders is they do have some marketing opportunities. And so whether it be now or in the future, if you want to let people know about things that you're doing in Wabasha, you can do that. And then also you can attend the December 10th holiday party that they have for networking. They also have annual meetings and other events that you can attend. And you might not be ready to say hello with big hair at 80s theme December 10th, but keep in mind that you might want to start attending events. And you can host an event too. You can be a host here. One of the businesses that has to do with construction or something, we want to say, come on over to Wabasha, hang out at the Eagle Center for a tour, and then we'll have the meeting here. So you can invite them here as well. Just out of some work we were doing in CETA, we were looking at doing a federal grant for 5 counties, which you're named in, but we're also looking at doing an outdoor recreation grant for another organization. And through that, I learned about that the Mississippi River Parkway Commission and Great River Road is thinking about putting in a federal EDA grant. And since you're on that scenic byway, just stay involved in that as much as you can. And it was really neat. Is her name Tony?
Tony, yeah.
Tony was a real big part of this. And so you've got a local ear, but there's links right here to when you go right to their site. But if they get funding, they're going to get a lot of funding for development of that byway, and the fact that tourism was affected by COVID and how can it be rebuilt. So staying on that. And then we had a meeting where a local person, thanks to Caroline and Emily, they attracted people to come in and talk about playground for all ages and abilities. And so MJ Busian, did I say that right? Bushan, agreed to be a local chair. Each of us took a part of what we could assist her with. And so she got some information from the Port Authority about a 1-to-1 match for the cost of the playground equipment. And then the county sent some information about how they had a grant right away for like benches and signage and things like that. So she's getting a lot of information. If you wanted to read on, you can find out where the money went for the $80 million that the Main Street Economic Revitalization. Cities could not apply organizations could, and the first $40,000 was given away. And so you could just read through that and find out where it's at. You might have an organization that you're a part of that, you know, I can't say that I can find how we would use any of this money at this point. DMC got money, Duluth, local initiatives got money, even the Southwest Initiative Foundation got a few dollars. And I saw another list where it showed that $150,000 went to Smith. So I would say you could read through that. I wouldn't need to tell you too much more. I would also add that since I did the report, I saw that Don's market came back on the market. It was pending on November 3rd, and the sale has not gone through. It's back active. And that was about all I have. So when we had one of the revolving loan fund clients, they were interested in that building, but it was bought at the same time that they were interested in it. And they found a place to lease since then. All from me, unless there's questions or direction.
No, but very appreciate this very much. Thank you. Isaac Walton, Dave and Craig.
I haven't
Anything?
heard a thing.
I went there.
Well, I didn't get any questions. I didn't get the.
And I thought you were gonna speak, and then they said, oh, we're gonna skip that this.
Okay, I figured they did because they were gonna present the questions, and I never got anything. So I
Well,
Okay.
the big,
All right.
they went on and on about anything and everything, but their basic complaint, again, is that they don't think that the questions that they submitted to the core were ever answered. They keep harping on that, so.
Do you think they were answered? I mean,
I
you were,
don't know what the questions were.
I can't
Well,
remember.
I don't think my question was either. One day yet. I'll tell you the truth, because I asked some pointed questions about, are you, once it gets filled, is it over? Maybe we can get some cover on it.
Oh, and the
And
colonel.
then I hear from Chuck, and Chuck says, oh no, the 217 covers us in the summer, and then during the winter, we're gonna haul out the 130 to keep it open, and I'm going, wow, this is something new.
Yeah,
It's
it
like-
keeps moving. It's a moving target.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I don't know what, that, you know, the Corps telling me one thing and Chuck's telling me that's part of the 217 is that,
I didn't see that in there.
well, this is from, I kind of believe Chuck is.
Chuck's on, just to let you
He
know.
sure goes.
Chuck's here.
I hope he is.
Do you think it's some
Yeah, I don't know. I can ask, the secretary, whoever that is.
You
Send me
know,
those questions so we have a list.
and maybe it's questions that, you know, collectively we can answer because we're that much farther along,
Yeah.
you
We
know,
might be able.
at this point. Because, I mean, it's been a number of
Bringing
years.
it up, well, pretty soon
Yeah.
we're into it. We should remove all the dams and make it a free flow.
I know.
Well, yeah.
Okay, let's backpedal to what we really can do,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from there, you know.
But just off the cuff, the other day up when we were up on Fifth Camp Boulevard talking, one of the gentlemen who's the colonel's right-hand man said, well, we want to get to the point where it's full, and then you guys will be making all the decisions as to.
I know that. I heard that.
Yeah, remember that?
I heard that.
I'm going,
Loud and
well,
clear.
okay, when is that gonna happen, that we'll control that people can haul out of there? When's that day?
Yeah.
But that's just off the street talk. So that led me astray, and then with the comment, you know, that I just mentioned, that they're gonna continue hauling out of there to create room for the Reedsville.
Yeah,
And so that has to do with the bean field, is they wanted to buy that so that they could just pump right into there every 5 years. And see, that's the reason behind wanting to buy the bean field. So they're up in the air too. So where are they gonna haul this 130 out every winter to make room for the, because when Kona does their dredging, it's coming off the roller out, it's not off the Reeds.
it's not for reads.
No, it's coming after all the three other ones. So that's why they need someplace to pump that direct. And that's why they would be taking it out in the winter. So that's the way I'm taking this all in, is they have to create a place to pump direct. We should get all those answers. And then when he said that they'd like to turn over where the well water retention is, on that end and get that back to the city, well, let's talk about that. Get that in covered or we can develop. So questions to be asked. I mean,
They're gonna be,
Can you read my
Okay.
writing?
I don't
Yeah,
know how much room they got left in there. If we take 30,000 yards out of there every year, I mean, that thing's gonna be open for a long time.
Chuck, can you hear me?
Chuck, can you hear us? I
Well,
think
they've all
maybe he's having
130,000
technical
ounces.
issues.
No,
All right.
I'm trying.
Have you heard our conversation about the 130,000 yards coming out every winter?
Is that part of the 270?
Is that part of 217, That's all right.
That's, I mean, those
Well,
are the questions that we need to ask.
Yeah, we need to,
And then, Isaac Walton should be informed. We don't know. I don't know. I'm confused.
I'll get a list of their questions,
Yeah,
what they sent into the Corps to make sure, and then at least get that, that's the start.
John, do you
well-
want them to go to Caroline then?
I thought it was according to
Well,
what
these-
the court was gonna.
I explained this to Dave some time ago, that it's coming out of the Reed's Cut, not the Reed's Island. And that's going directly into the core pit. And then we'll be hauling that, and you guys are getting paid on that too. We'll be hauling that out of
okay,
the
so this is
core pit back over to Dairy Queen every winter.
the second number on the tipping or the hauling fee, right? The
Roger.
tipping fee, if you will.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
you're getting paid on every yard of that.
Okay, and that's hydraulically coming into the
That open.
the big pit, right?
Right, exactly.
Got it.
And that's
Okay,
what that
there you go.
pipeline's all apart. That's gonna cross the bean field. And we've given them an easement to do that.
Got it.
Coming
And
across.
cross the cemetery too.
Right, thank you, Chuck.
All right, Chuck, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's true that it's part of it. We're getting paid for it.
Yeah, and that's where that second number is coming from, so.
And that's why they either taking the cut, putting it on the Reed's Island, and then pumping it back over to that hole. They're gonna go direct, the Thompson or the new name of it, will be pumping right into that 260,000 pit, and then during the winter, and then we get part of that too.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Okay, so yeah, if you want to send me, someone wants to track down these questions, maybe it's in my email already, I don't know.
My recollection was that Paul was gonna make that connection directly. Remember, he was asking for the officer contacts, to make sure he was contacting the right person with Agribusiness, so
Okay,
that was something.
okay,
Paul might have a question.
Like
okay.
a year ago, 2 years ago, right?
I thought it was within.
Unless they have a lot more new questions. Probably
Okay.
do. He's a member.
I don't, it's,
I can get some clarity.
okay, so let's move on. Administrator and mayor updates, anything?
I think a lot of the things Em and I have done together with Kathy, who also mentioned them. So the good thing news is we're all working as a team really well together. I would say the bonding tour was a success, and it feels more real than that highway will come in. And I think the timing's right with the infrastructure bill. So I am very, very hopeful, and we're just going to be watching our email very carefully that we apply for every opportunity that we can. So I'm just glad we have a really cool looking plan. It's hard to get nice conceptual designs and you can then show a committee, you
For
know?
free.
No kidding.
Yeah, so.
Hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
It was time well spent, it wasn't free, but.
But I think I realized today just how complicated this is. And I think when I started, someone expressed the frustration, like, why hasn't this been done? And I think we were reminded, because it's not easy. It's a really complicated project with wetlands, floodplain, sand, so.
Yeah,
And then for the barge terminal project, we all met with comments on the section 217D agreement. That's the agreement with the Army Corps, and we're preparing comments. And Chuck, for you, those represent both your comments and our comments all together, one documented that will be submitted to the Corps. And then I've asked Brian Mullen for a project timeline again, because I think we've had some conversations on when do we bring in attorneys and when do we handle different parts of the negotiation of putting this together, and that's still not clear to me. So I think Brian is gonna help us work on that. So I just reminded him on that. And then we are collaborating with the city of Kellogg, an ATV club, a snowmobile club, to apply for a recreation planning grant to help realize the Wabasha Kellogg Trail connection. And I think the planning grant would be how to make Wabasha Kellogg like a recreation destination. So how do we build on all of our assets to further promote us, I think, beyond just coming here for the Eagle Center, but what can I do and recreate here? And so Bolton and Mank is preparing that application, and that will just bring technical assistance to us to hopefully create like a really nice plan that then again allows us to apply for future funding. That's all I've got.
So I want to say a special thank you to you, Emily, for your presentation and then your follow-up,
Yes.
which was just strategic in itself.
Follow-up is probably more important.
Yeah, and knowing who to follow up with, I think was really brilliant. And then also for staff, because none of this stuff happens without anybody. I mean,
All the time that went into the applications that weren't
Yeah.
funded leads to all the work that will be funded. It's always progress.
Yeah.
When we don't get funds, the thing I learned from Angie Craig's, district director, we called, because we weren't totally sure whether we were out of the infrastructure bill or not. There was a point at which we were in it, but we figured we hadn't heard anything. It must have gotten out of the Senate after all the first reading. But we called because we thought we should know that when the House came, and her, Liz Young's characterization of the infrastructure bill is that there's a significant amount. I want to say 6 billion again. I think I'm just remembering the other 6 billion, but I think it's about 6 billion. It will come through the typical agency programs, so it'll be MnDOT administered. But it'll probably expedite things, and it'll probably open doors for projects that haven't been able to be funded in the past because of additional resources. So our Minnesota freight application, that's going to be put to good use again.
Yep.
And hopefully other ways as well. So I think that's really, really timely. And the one thing that got me really motivated, I think, was Brian Todd from the Post Bulletin. And he's just like endlessly enthusiastic about Wabasha, which I really appreciate. He's so good about covering the broad area. But I would say if he ever calls you, just please take that call and be as candid as you can with him, because he will prioritize our views and our goals if we share what they are. And I really appreciated his coverage of that. And of course, he did it.
it's a great piece.
He did us very well by talking to Barge as well, because she really understands. I think sometimes talking to reporters can be scary, but if we don't give them information, they can't highlight us. And that, having the coverage at that regional level is just great. Getting photos, the quality of photos that were available.
Yeah.
And
It
so
was-
if you haven't seen it, we did make it to the Post Bulletin, which is, I think, great. Yeah.
And thanks to everybody who was there. I think that too. We didn't take a big push. I wasn't really sure in COVID times whether that was welcome or not. The Eagle Center was so gracious to host us. I didn't want to be like, we're going to pack the joint. Typically, we probably would have tried to do that, but I thought we had a really nice showing of support.
It was just great. And it was really a good idea for doing it at the Eagle Center too.
Yeah.
So all of it. I got nothing else. Anybody else?
Give you a quick update on the Eagle Center.
Yes.
We decided to
Oh, yeah.
put the storm sewer drain in, which made a lot of sense because it's going to get such a late start in the spring. So then we ripping up half that alley, put it in all the way down the river, and put back the crushed rock and then cement slab with the old garage was. That's all going to come out, so it'd be kind of a mess for the winter. And then also in the 110 building, which was Catherine's dress shop, after they gutted it and we went in, the building is junk.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So the engineers put it on complete hold until they can, they're gonna tear it down anyway in 2 years, so it's just kind of like, there it sits. It's the worst construction build you've ever seen in your life.
So that's the 1-story building.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know.
So that's put a kink in the whole design for now, and there's an order, nothing stopped from the engineers. So you gotta do a complete redesign for strengthening and then how much money you put into that building. So we'll find out tomorrow morning what's happening.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Say, John?
Right. Yes, Chuck.
I'm sorry I got in late. I missed the time change. Was there anything earlier that I could have helped out with or not?
No, I think you hit it right on time for, talking the port discussion, so, yeah, the rest was, all about a loan that our local hardware store wants.
Gotcha. Thank
So
you.
we're good. Yes. Hearing,
Well, does he know, do you know the cost to truck in sand? We're talking about how do we
Oh,
fill Mosquito Field? And we know there's free sand somewhere in Wabasha, and we just want to know how much do you know how much it costs to truck sand from the sand pit to, do you know where Mosquito Field is, like next to Dick's Market?
Short answer is no. I bet I can find out.
Okay.
Tell them the number, how much it is.
Yeah, what did I do with that document?
200,000.
it's $200.
About 2 months, in the 2 months.
But there's prep, there's strip, and there's compaction, there's a lot of things to say, just.
Okay.
There's a sloping.
Yeah, and retention, you gotta bank that, when you can use the stuff you strip off to do that. You just have to get quotes,
Yeah,
and I could get one.
okay. Yeah, if anybody would be able to do that, that would be great. And I wish I could find, I do actually have the exact numbers for that, but now I can't find it. So, but we could send that to Chuck, exactly how much we're talking about. And I can send that to you, Dave, too, so.
I'll get an answer quickly.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Anything else?
For me, because I'll get you an answer from somebody else.
Yeah, get us 2 answers.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Hold on, I found it. Oh, let's see. Okay, floodplain.
Chuck, don't go anywhere yet.
Wait, don't go anywhere. Oh, okay. So it says 25,000 to 30,000 cubic yards of fill. Is that what everyone guessed?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know the depth and the height.
That seems
of
like
the
enough.
floodplain.
This is just for Mosquito Field.
Yeah,
Because what it says is, this is how much they estimated would be needed in the developable portion of the property.
Is that
Approximately 9 to 10 feet of fill would be needed to bring it out of the floodplain. Approximate amount of fill needed is 25,000 to 30,000 cubic yards.
at some point I heard discussion about needing to take stuff out of there before you put fill in there. Is that still true?
no, just strip.
Not there,
Strip
Chuck.
the topsoil off, it's all gravel.
You're thinking of across the road.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
Never
we
mind.
can do gravel.
25,000, you said, Carolyn?
30.
30,000, got it.
Figure per yard cost.
And
Yeah,
at
yard.
the time that we did this, we said 73,000 square feet was developable there. That's still a pretty large parcel, I
Yeah.
think, 73,000 square feet. So we do also have estimated what you can develop and.
73 times 9 feet divided by 27. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Woodley?
Yep.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Post same sign. Thank you very much.
Anyone